This is an important day for the state of Maryland, and I want to thank my friends in the General Assembly for their work on this legislation, and I want to thank them also for the opportunity to speak this morning. We have said from the earliest days of the Moore Miller administration that there would be no higher priority in our state than keeping our citizens safe. And we promise to be partners in the conversation in the juvenile justice work that's taking place this session. We've been clear that any juvenile justice bill that comes to my desk must emphasize accountability. But I want to be clear, I'm talking about accountability both for those who commit a crime and also accountability for those who are taking care of our young people. We need accountability when someone repeatedly violates the law, yes. But we also need accountability for the adults and the systems responsible for preventing and responding to those situations. We need to make sure that actions have consequences, yes. And we need to make sure that our kids are getting the rehabilitation that they need. The legislation you'll hear about today has that philosophy at its center. And I'm proud to stand here in support of this ongoing process. You know, before we took office, the executive branch liked to pick fights with the legislature in the pages of the paper instead of actually having real debates and conversations in the halls of the State House. Pointing fingers and telling the legislature what needs to happen, but not being part of the process to actually make it happen. Well, we've decided to move differently, and I think our state is going to be better off because of it. We are proud to partner with the legislature on this bill going forward. And we're proud to partner with them on a broader effort to address juvenile crime and rehabilitate Maryland's children who have broken the law. We will tackle this challenge together and from all angles. It's one of the reasons that I was proud to stand with the Senate President and the Speaker of the House just a few days ago in Brooklyn as we unveiled the Enough Act to fight child poverty, because violence is both a cause and a consequence of poverty. It's why we've included record funding for law enforcement in our proposed budget, because we need boots on the ground to solve crimes and close cases. It's why we propose more funding for programs that uplift our kids at the Department of Juvenile Services, because we are all responsible for ensuring that children receive the rehabilitation that they need to get their lives on track. It's not just the right thing to do, it helps to make us safer. Today's bill is a part of that broad effort, and all of us will have a role to play. And so in coming weeks, my role is to be an engaged partner in this conversation. The legislature has a thorough process between introduction and passage, and I'm aware of the fact that this is the start of a debate and not the end of one. And that debate won't just be between us. The community will also have a say. I'm confident that when the final version of this bill gets to my desk, I will enthusiastically sign it. We're talking about our children. We're talking about our future. And these discussions are hard, but we're not going to hide from them. We need to rethink how cases are processed for young people when there's a firearm involved. We need to increase probation when kids need more time to benefit from rehabilitation. We need to be able to respond to situations where a very young person takes someone's life regardless of age. And we need to do all of this while remembering that our children are Maryland's greatest assets. This bill helps us to meet these priorities and others, and it will create stronger guardrails for some very difficult situations. I'm confident in this team. I'm thankful for this legislature. I'm confident that together we will take a big step to move Maryland forward and to make Maryland safer. I now turn the program over to my friend and partner, Senate President Bill Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Governor, and thank you all for being here today. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, members of the legislature. We are very pleased to be here for this joint announcement. I want to thank specifically Governor Moore, Lieutenant Governor Miller, Speaker Jones, and the chairs of the Senate Judicial Proceedings Committee and the House Judiciary Committee for being here today. I'd like to take a moment to frame where we are in this moment in time. The simple truth is that the juvenile justice system in Maryland is not working optimally to provide the best outcomes for children and families. What you're going to hear today from Chair Smith and Chair Clippinger is the details of legislation that was developed in collaboration with the governor's absolute commitment to improving the juvenile justice system. I want to be clear about how I see the issues surrounding youth crime in Maryland. While youth offenders account for less than 10% of the crimes committed, unfortunately, it is clear that they become the largest part of the crime perception challenge in Maryland. This has contributed to a genuine concern around community safety and juvenile crime over this last year and last several years. Whether it be through the intake process, figuring out the correct accountability for young people, or equally as important, accountability for adults in the system who are charged with administering this system, we must ensure that all parts are working to their highest potential. A state as great as Maryland can and must do better. I continue to believe from the very outset that it starts and ends with executing the laws and policies with fidelity at all levels in a coordinated way every single day. Whether it's the police, DJS, or the state's attorney's offices, everyone must work together. That is the only way to impact the group of children who we all know have the greatest barriers to success. That's why I'm pleased to be standing here with the governor, the speaker, and General Assembly colleagues to announce a plan for improving our juvenile justice system through enhancements of 3 core concepts: accountability, rehabilitation, and collaboration. Through this legislation, the state budget, and executive action, we will be improving the accountability, rehabilitation, and collaboration of our system writ large. First, on accountability, I want to be clear that we are accountable for the outcomes of kids, and we must hold state and local agencies accountable for improving this system. Regarding rehabilitation, simply put, we need to ensure that young people are participating effectively in their own rehabilitation to achieve the outcomes that we know are possible. And finally, we know that none of this works without collaboration. We need all state and local agencies to collaborate across the system to ensure that families and kids are not slipping through the cracks. This legislation makes clear that the intent is that law enforcement interactions, that we are capturing all law enforcement interactions with children. We're strengthening existing laws. We're closing loopholes that allow too many young people to slip through the juvenile system without a paper trail, services, or in some cases, justice for victims. Ultimately, we are improving accountability, rehabilitation, and collaboration in the system overall. Changing the arc for children with the greatest number of barriers to success so that their outcomes match their potential. This is not a short process. This will not happen overnight, but it is one that I know that everyone standing here today is absolutely committed to seeing through. You'll hear the details from our chairs, but before that, I want to hand it over to my partner in this work, Speaker Adrian Jones. Speaker Jones.
Good afternoon, everyone. In addition to being Speaker of the House, another title I'm proud to have is grandmother. Every day, I'm so blessed to love, support, and even spoil my 11-year-old grandson and 6-year-old granddaughter. Like so many other Maryland children, they go to school, they play with their friends, and they dream big. So when we talk about juvenile crime, I can't help but think about my grandchildren, because the victims of most juvenile crimes are children, like-minded children. When I think about keeping them safe, I think about making sure the struggling and sometimes dangerous children around them are getting the help they need. Right now, juveniles aren't getting the services they need. Right now, agencies aren't sharing information with each other. Right now, DJS, law enforcement, and state's attorneys aren't coordinating with each other. Right now, there is no meaningful oversight of this process. Let me be clear. Right now, juvenile offenders and the services and accountability they need are separated by an abundance of confusion. Egos, political agendas, and arguments over process have filled the gap. This is unacceptable. Juveniles need clear pathways to rehabilitation and a system of accountability. The legislation we are announcing today will take the first steps to bridge these gaps. It will ensure that we do a better job of connecting children with the services they need. It will enhance the juvenile justice reforms we have passed by putting additional guardrails in place to ensure information sharing, create better informed decisions on each and every child, and create accountability at the highest level of government. Right now, too many children in our juvenile system are falling through the cracks. The chairs will discuss more of the details of this legislation with you in a moment. I want to specifically thank House Judiciary Chair Luke Clippinger, Vice Chair Sandy Bartlett, and all the members of the Judiciary Committee for their hard work on these incredibly tough issues. The committee began this work last summer, and they never lost sight of the larger picture, which was the rehabilitation of our children, coordination of services, and greater accountability for everyone involved. We know we have a lot of work ahead of us to resolve these issues, but we're going to get it right. We will get it right for our communities, for our schools, and for our families. Most importantly, we'll get it right for the victims. We take for granted that the next victim will be someone else's child or grandchild. As a grandmother, I can't take that for granted anymore. Thank you, and now please let me turn it over to the chair of the Senate Judicial Proceedings Committee, Senator Will Smith.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, I want to thank the Senate President, the Speaker of the House, and the Chair of the House Judiciary Committee for their commitment to public safety and equity in our justice system. I also want to thank the Governor and the Lieutenant Governor. He and his administration have been true partners in this work, and I got to tell you, it's been a breath of fresh air to understand their new approach in dealing with the matters with the legislature. It's been the most collaborative and detailed and meaningful experience I've had with an executive, so I appreciate that. And I'm thankful for your commitment to make our state a safer and a more prosperous place for all. Now, the juvenile justice system is premised on rehabilitation and accountability, with a heavy emphasis on rehabilitation. The legislation we offer today focuses on improving accountability, rehabilitation, and collaboration within the juvenile justice system. But it's also important to note the comprehensive nature of our approach, not just through legislation, but also through executive action and the state budget. Now, with regard to accountability, we are all accountable for the outcomes of our kids, and we must hold our state and our local agencies accountable for improving the juvenile justice system. And we'll do this in part by requiring written documentation of youth who are taken into custody by police so that there are no more gaps in information sharing between our law enforcement agencies and the Department of Juvenile Services. We're going to decrease the DJS timeline for making intake decisions to ensure timely delivery of services and decisions about the appropriate level of supervision. We're going to continue investing in programs like Thrive to improve outcomes of the most vulnerable children in our communities. Now, you know that that program has rolled out in Baltimore City and also in Prince George's County. It's had some fantastic results, so we'll continue investing in that. We're going to ensure that local law enforcement agencies are training their patrol officers accurately on the Youth Police Interrogation Act. And we're going to identify current services available to youth in Maryland and additional capacity that's needed through the Juvenile Justice Monitoring Unit. With regard to rehabilitation, we need to make sure that our kids are actually participating in the rehabilitative process. We're going to increase the possible length of probation to ensure kids are receiving and participate in the rehabilitation that they need. And my colleague will expound upon this a little bit later on, but we're going to expand the jurisdiction for DJS to include kids under 13 for firearms-related offenses, car thefts, third-degree sexual offenses, and animal abuse. We're also going to ensure that kids participate in treatment by allowing a court to extend probation for multiple unexcused absences from a treatment program. Here I want to thank Senator Carter from Prince George's County. Sorry, oh my God, from Baltimore City. Senator Carter from Baltimore City. For all of her work on Nikhil's Law, which we have incorporated into this work. And that requires an intake officer to file a petition for supervision of a child or a delinquency petition for a child of under 13 who is involved in the death of a victim. Finally, I'll conclude with collaboration. We need state and local agencies to collaborate across systems to ensure that kids aren't slipping through the system. Working with the governor, we put $43 million into the governor's Office of Children to ensure that there is a single entity responsible for tracking youth across multiple agencies. We're also going to expand the Commission on Juvenile Justice Reform to include representation from all organizations responsible for children's well-being. The Commission will also be responsible for providing recommendations on how to improve the juvenile justice system and will provide oversight and accountability. Again, I want to emphasize that all of our efforts here today are centered on accountability, rehabilitation, and collaboration, a comprehensive approach to addressing the challenges we face regarding the juvenile justice system and public safety. And now it's my honor to turn the podium over to my friend and my colleague, Delegate Clippinger, who will provide a rundown for the rest of the legislation that we'll offer today.
Good morning. It has been my pleasure to serve as the chair of the House Judiciary Committee for the last 6 years, and I'm very appreciative to be here today with the Speaker, the Senate President, the Governor, the Lieutenant Governor, and so many members of the House and the Senate to stand in support of this important legislation. I'm very, very happy that we've been able to take a comprehensive step forward today with introducing this legislation and moving it forward. Over the summer, as has been mentioned a couple times, my committee had 3 briefings on different parts of the juvenile justice system and brought in to have the committee ask questions, some really tough questions in many cases. The state's attorneys, the police, the public defenders, people who provide these services to kids. A wide range of different people came in. What came out of that set of briefings is that in many ways the structure of our juvenile justice system doesn't work. And so what we tried to do with this legislation and what we will do as we move this legislation forward is to figure out the best way forward to ensure, again, that children are held accountable, that victims are able to feel confidence in this process, and that we're conducting the collaboration and oversight necessary to make sure that the system continues, or starts in some cases, to work, and work for our kids and our communities. The legislation does a number of things, and it is a more technical bill. And that's part of the challenge in talking about it here today, because we get these issues related to juvenile justice, and quite frankly, it hits us all in a tough place. This isn't supposed to happen. Kids aren't supposed to be out there committing crimes. Where are the parents? Where are the schools? Where's everybody? That's what we say. It hits us in an emotional place because we don't want to see kids that way. We want to believe that they can do better. We know that they can do better. And yet, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they commit horrible crimes. And sometimes then afterwards, the systems that are in place to help them rehabilitate and move forward simply don't work. And so we're going to take some steps forward that allow us to continue to get kids the help that they need while answering concerns about public safety that need to be addressed. So we are going to say that if you're between 10 and 12 years old and you're found in possession of a firearm, we want to know what's going on. We're going to allow jurisdiction of the Department of Juvenile Services in those cases because we need to know what's going on when a very young child is in possession of a firearm. We need to know what's going on when they commit car theft. We need to know that they are then going to be able to get the services that they're supposed to get. So another part of the legislation addresses issues related to when the state's attorney can get the chance to see charges that were initially brought by a police officer. When the department decides not to go forward with those cases, state's attorneys should be able to see those cases, particularly in situations related to ghost guns and stolen guns. We have to make sure that state's attorneys get the chance to look at those cases before those cases are simply resolved at intake. As was mentioned before, the legislation would require police officers who arrest a child to write a report. This may sound mundane and simple, but surprisingly that doesn't happen in every case. And what happens is when police officers don't write a report, you lose that bit of the story if children come back and go into the system again and again. We can't keep track of what's happened in the background of these kids' lives if the police officers didn't write a report when they arrested them in the first place. We do take steps in the legislation to address kids who are coming back through the system, who are on probation for another juvenile case in the past. And I want to say equally importantly, it's all equally important. The collaboration that is missing in this system is unacceptable. Everybody does just enough to check the box, but nobody does enough to coordinate with one another to look at the kids who are in the system, and to figure out how we're going to move them forward and how we're going to rehabilitate those kids. And so to that end, we're going to combine a couple different oversight boards that have already been in existence in different agencies. And we're going to combine those agencies together so that we bring together the schools, we bring together law enforcement, we bring together the public defender, advocates for children, and in fact, kids who have gone through the system, to come together and to look at the data that we don't really effectively look at now, that's already available through the longitudinal data center. It's a hard word, and I've practiced it a million times. Longitudinal data center, to allow us to be able to see what programs work and what doesn't. There are a lot of moving parts to this bill. There's going to be a lot more discussion about this bill. If you're looking for the thing that is going to perfectly solve all of your problems, you're not in the right place. This is going to take time. It's going to take effort, but it's only going to happen if we're focusing on the kids, we're focusing on the victims, and we're focusing on making sure that the system actually works to improve public safety and improve rehabilitation. And with that, I think we're ready to take some questions. All right, thank you very much. Go ahead, guys. No questions, great. Thanks.
You said that you were going to extend probation periods for youth. Does that include new mandatory minimums or maximum limits? And then what exactly is the length of those expansions for misdemeanors and felonies?
So for the Juvenile Restoration Act, which we passed last year, set caps on the length of probation for the juvenile justice system. So for misdemeanors, you could go up to a year with 3-month increments. And for felonies, you can go up to 2 years with 3-month increments. What's happening is that when someone is placed on probation, the access to services isn't happening quick enough. And so the length of probation could be halfway over or the majority over, before they even get enrolled into services. And so what we've done is we've extended it for misdemeanors for up to 2 years in 4-month increments. And for felonies, we've gone up to 4 years maximum in 4-month increments to ensure that there's the adequate level of supervision and services provided to folks that are enmeshed in the juvenile justice system.
When you were crafting the different pieces of this legislation that extend probationary periods or alter other portions of this bill, what data were you using? Were you using state data? Were you looking at other national data? Where did you get it?
So during the briefings over the summer, we had briefings that included people who provide the services. What's common among service providers for juveniles who are placed on probation, they've all got waiting lists. And so the kids were waiting to get placed. And while they were waiting to get placed, sort of the meter started. And so that 6-month period for misdemeanors and the year period for felonies was starting. So in some cases, and in a lot of cases, they weren't able to actually complete the programs that were being ordered by the time that the probation was over. So what we did is we took that information, we took the information that we were getting from service providers that said, hey, we probably need more time to be able to help these kids finish, and applied that in this case. Is there specific information of this many kids were waiting this long? We're still even gathering that information, but certainly the information that we have, anecdotal though it may be, is consistent enough that we know we need to extend that period.
Just a quick follow-up. I think when you're looking at the change in jurisdiction, particularly for children under 13, for the specific charges, what were you looking to, I guess, data-wise, to make that change?
The number of children under 13, 10 to 12 is the range. It's in the very first part of the bill. It says that DJS would have jurisdiction if they're found in possession of an illegal weapon, illegal gun, if they are found with animal abuse or alleged to have committed animal abuse, third-degree sex offense, or car theft. The idea here was that, again, we were hearing from law enforcement saying that they were not able to take any steps forward. It was partially a problem where there is a lack of good communication as to the Child in Need of Services program, but that these crimes seem to be consistently the issues again from police officers, from hearing from them, that's how they got added to the list.
What is the scope and scale of the number of kids, 10, 11, 12, who are committing these crimes that you're hearing?
So when we did the Juvenile Justice Reform Council last time, it's not very many. It's a very small number of kids. Part of the debate that we had in 2022 when we passed the Juvenile Justice Reform Act was we said, all right, where is the appropriate line? We landed on 13 and over for most cases. And what we have found over the last couple of years is that in these specific areas that those cases need to be brought in. Having said that, we think that there's serious enough cases that they should be brought in. The number of kids who will be impacted, I don't think, will be very large. I think that there's about 50 in the Reform Council.
Gentlemen, I want to ask this question as a can in the sense that many of the juveniles who are a part of the system currently have had past incidents. You talk about collaboration. How do you kind of either streamline the system and or get in front of this before they get to crimes that are heinous?
Look, part of this is a comprehensive approach. The commission that we have revitalized through this legislation is going to bring together folks that are steeped in this issue, practitioners, public defenders, state's attorneys, people that deal with youth in the justice system and in the community, to also to offer best practices, give us recommendations, and then provide oversight. We've also added an element within the Juvenile Justice Monitoring Unit that will evaluate the current panoply of services or lack thereof, and then offer suggestions as to where those gaps are and what services need to be offered. So there's never been a comprehensive analysis of what's being provided and where the gaps are. And now you have an entity set up that's going to report to the governor, that's going to report to GOCAP, that's going to report to the legislature on an annual basis.
So then why were you able to, why was the answer not to increase the time it takes to get children's services, rather than put that on the child and extend their probation if the state time is not checked?
Well, it's both and. We are working on making sure that there are adequate services available, but that's a long-term project, and we first need to understand and evaluate where the services are and where they aren't, and that's what this is going to help us do. And so you have to have the ability to supervise and also to provide services to the extent that they are available to that child in the time that we have. And again, it's a modest increase in time to ensure that they're able to get into the services that they need.
I'm sorry, let me go a step further on that. The question with regard to the length of probation, what we're doing, and the important part of the work that the Department of Juvenile Services needs to be doing, and that they've struggled to do recently, is to provide the rehabilitative support to these kids. And sometimes that support and sometimes that therapy takes a lot longer than a 6-month period. In the case of a kid who's found delinquent for possession of a gun, it's going to take longer than that 6-month or even perhaps that year period. On the same token, it's not going to take until they're 21, and that's what the standard used to be prior to 22, or prior to the previous bit of legislation. So I guess another way of looking at this is we're trying to get those kids the rehabilitative help that they need. That takes time. Probation in the juvenile sense, I would argue, is not the same as probation in the adult sense, where in the adult sense it can be meant to be punitive. It's meant to be rehabilitative. And if we don't do that job right, then they're just going to come back again. So we need to make sure that there's time to do the work that needs to be done.
Was there a specific event or a specific thing that made you say, we have to make a change to the juvenile laws?
There have been a number of, the Senate President and I share the same district, and there have been a number of events in our district. There was the terrible events that happened in July in Brooklyn. There were events where victims were in Patterson Park, where we've had issues in our district. But there's been issues all the way across the state. In Prince George's County, issues in the Washington suburbs with carjackings that have pointed to the different structural problems within the department. And so, is there one thing? No, but I'll also say this. It's not these issues with kids, certainly over the last couple of years, appear to have been accelerating and appear to have been getting worse. To say that we're ever going to completely eliminate juvenile crime, this juvenile